So our theme for this evening is what comes next. And usually if you ask an editor or a publisher what comes next, they'll whip out their catalog and tell you what book is going to come out next week or next month, what author that they've decided to invest in. Most publishers have a clear view of their role as intermediaries between authors and readers. That's what we do best. And if we understand that, we can do that very well. The spotlight is not on us, the spotlight is on our authors, and we're there to serve our readers. Most publishers understand that. Their role as intermediaries. We keep close to our readers and our authors as a way to identify the needs of our readers and the expertise of our authors, the authors that we begin to discover. As needs change and as authors with new ideas appear, in essence, we're always looking for what comes next. Change and innovation, the introduction of new ideas, all of this compels us to always be on the lookout for what's new and what's different. Our readers depend on our creativity. They depend on us to show them and alert them to what is new and what's different. But at this particular moment in history, we see that things are different from what we have experienced in the past. So what comes next, this question, what comes next, is not just a question for the editorial and marketing departments. It lies at the heart of our continuing relevance and our ability to survive as publishing houses. The pandemic has forced us to examine how we work and how to lead at a distance. It has showed us new ways of relating to our readers. I'm sure that many of you have experienced this. And it's brought technology to the forefront of everything that we do. In some countries, new consciousness and legislation regarding greater integration of diverse minority groups highlight the role of the church and the growing demand for change in what we publish, by whom, and with which group of employees and collaborators. The evolution of technology enables new players to enter the market and even compete against us. Against us as publishing houses. So self-published authors, ebook publishers, secular and international conglomerates, even bookstores, printers, wholesalers, and churches who now have access to the same production and distribution platforms that we use. So how do we set ourselves apart in this scenario in order to survive and keep our relevance? So when we say what comes next, it's what comes next in the broadest sense of where we are headed as a publishing industry and as individual publishers. So to answer some of those questions, we've assembled this group of, this is the elite of LittWorld. A group of innovative and experienced publishers to discuss what comes next. So, I'll go down the line here. Bernice, many of you know Bernice Cho. Bernice, I'm sorry. We're publishing a book by Bernice Cho. So anyway, so I'm forgiven, right? Bernice Lee. Bernice is Managing Director of Graceworks Publishing House in Singapore. And Bernice says that she finds great joy empowering others to run the race before them in the ministry of the written word. And beside her is Alexandr Fleck, Sasha, an author, a publisher at Biblion in Czechia. He develops books and Bibles in a predominantly atheist country and focuses on innovation and acquisition and design to keep in business and to keep in ministry. Beside Sasha is Barine, who we heard speak this morning. Barine is based in Kenya, works as a publishing development coordinator for the United Bible Society's global team. He's founder of the Publishing Institute of Africa out of Nairobi. Carlo Cajeno, one of my oldest friends, is a Brazilian who became Swedish and is turning Italian. An economist who has become a publisher, and an editor who became a businessman. Carlo is the head of business development at StreetLib, based in Italy, and specializes in new formats and business models for the book industry. And finally, Sawsan Tannoury, publisher of the Dar Manhal Al-Hayat publishing house in Beirut, Lebanon, one of the world's great crossroads. She works as a Christian on the cutting edge of many cultures and belief systems. So we're a little ambitious here tonight. You know, we're going to aim to wrap up at about 9, but we have 5 panelists, and we have a number of questions. If there is time, we'll take a couple of questions at the very end. But I hope I'm not being too ambitious. And so I'm going to ask our panelists to be brief and objective in their answers, and maybe we can get through my list. Let's start off with a question to Bernice and Sawsan about the subject, the seemingly mundane subject, which is not so mundane anymore when we work out the consequences. Working from home, the hybrid model, management and leadership issues. The pandemic has changed the way that we work. Many of you have experienced this. We learned that we don't have to sacrifice productivity if we work from a distance. Many publishers are now changing the mix of in-office and work-from-home workers. And I would like to hear from Bernice and from Sawsan. What have you experienced in your workplaces, and what do you expect to change as a result of these new work models in book publishing? So let's start with Bernice, with Sawsan. Okay. We're all too polite here tonight, so go ahead, Bernice.
Okay, so at the height of the pandemic, we were all made to work from home. So the good thing is with technology, with Zoom calls and with Dropbox and with Google Drive, we managed. But we lost something. We lost the collegiality of working together. We lost camaraderie. We also lost a lot of things that we could have discussed immediately and gotten a solution for. I gained quite a few things though. I gained more responsibilities. Because we had staff who commuted to, in the past, they commuted to work. And I didn't want them, when things kind of began to open up, I didn't want them commuting to the office because they would be in a packed train or in a packed bus. So only those who could drive to work could come in. But it meant that because I drove and I had space in my home, I was handling things like fulfilling online orders and taking on many of the things that we would have shared if we were all in the same space. When we were working from home, we were productive, and I think because people were saving that commute time, they were able to handle the responsibilities well within the flexibility of working at night or whenever they could. But as I said, we lost out on the immediacy of making decisions and of doing things together.
Sasha.
I would like to start telling that actually the crisis in Lebanon wasn't only the pandemic.
Yeah.
It started before the pandemic with the protesters protesting, closing roads, and all what happened in Lebanon forced us to stay at home before the pandemic. And so we started working from home. And the question that rose up. How can we accomplish all the projects and maintain the deadlines and keep the deadlines of all the projects we have? And then it started also with the economic crisis. And after that came the Beirut blast and the closing after Beirut blast. So a continuous of crisis, one after each other. And then of course, pandemic, the COVID-19, that causes us staying at home. Even we closed our doors and we haven't opened them for days and days. And so I think I would like to start with a positive, because in the morning I said, let's start with the positive issues first, and then the negative results of staying and working from home. First of all, we as a staff were totally engaged with the work. The reason, because we are not going out. We do not have any other activities. We're not attending out all the meetings in our churches. So we have nothing to do, just cook and work, cook and work. In addition to that, in Lebanon, most of the time we don't have electricity, so no TV. I'm sorry, we are most of the time on generators and some time without any electricity at all. So the only thing is to work. That's why we focused more on finalizing our projects. Second, we focused on the work with less interruption. When you're in office, many people will knock your door, and you would have several meetings and visitors here and there, and you have to go to the printer, and so we focused totally on ongoing projects. Flexibility and independently. Flexibility, if you want to drink some coffee and have a rest, then you can work extra hours at night. So there is flexibility. This is a positive issue. Less expensive, because transportation. This is a positive issue. And also saving office accommodation, coffee, tissues, generator. So it was less paying expenses in the office. And saving time, because the distance between your home and the office, it might take 1 hour. Not to say we have to prepare ourselves and put makeup and shave and. So 1 hour and a half, that means you are saving time, you can work an extra 1 hour and a half. And we have learned extra tools. We haven't used Zoom except starting with the protesters and the working from home. So this is an issue as well. Got used to, of course, technology more, online devotions, virtual visits. I think someone here was invited for 3 days for a virtual visit to Lebanon. And it was amazing visiting each entity in our organization, including the publishing house. It made it easier to work with people outside the country. So it made it easier. We reacted to the maximum number of published books ever in 1 year because of the pandemic and staying at home. It made us be ready to fulfill the needs. For instance, when Beirut blast occurred, we thought, how can we produce something that can help the people that were affected in the blast? So we jumped and published this book. I forgot the name in English. It is Surprised by Suffering by R.C. Sproul. And we have distributed this book in Beirut among all the affected families. And it was a blessing. It made a difference among those suffering families who many of them lost their homes, their cars, and many their loved ones. So So we were, and from that time, we now are on our toes, ready all the time to fulfill the need, whether for the pandemic, whether for, and I will tell you more about that. And for instance, as well, we have a ministry, an entity ministry in our organization called Children and Youth Ministry. They used to do camps for children, but because of the pandemic and the protesting, we stopped doing that. So we thought, what is the idea to reach those children? We have thousands of children. Syrian children in Lebanon, in Syria, everywhere, in camps. So we thought, let's do a camp in a box. So we bought boxes, plastic boxes, and because we are the literature arm of our organizations, we started working very hard to produce books for children. Stories written by local authors, stories translated from English, I will show you some, and activity books. And we've done around 10 books between stories and activities, and insert them in the camp in a box. And these reached all Lebanon and part of Syria. So these are part of the books. This is written by a local author. It means how nice to have a friend. This is 100 days in school, and this is reconciliation in the forest. Okay. All these stories, they have a Christian message for children. Okay? And also we have done several, around 6 or 7 activity books, okay, for children, okay? And also we included other activities and videos and coloring and in this box. And we included also a link to YouTube, to a video on YouTube, telling children or helping the children how to do the activities and the crafts and everything. So this is how we reacted to the pandemic and the crisis in Lebanon. The negative, do I have time?
I think we need to...
Well, negative results, of course, there is nothing little.
Okay. I think we need to proceed to the next question, but keep your pen in that place so that at the very end, maybe we can come back to it. I'm going to open to questions and answers also. So if we want to come back to this issue, that's going to work. But in the interest of time, I think we need to speed ahead. I'd like to switch gears now to talk about something quite a bit different, which is the diversification of reading platforms. In many markets, there is a growing demand for long-form content. Philip Yancey the other night was talking about how people are reading less and smaller, and fragments instead of larger pieces. Yes, that's happening. But there is a growing demand in some areas for long-form content in ebook or audio formats. Even though print is still dominant in most countries, we see that that's coming. So I want to ask Carlo, this is his area of specialty, and then later on Sasha to follow up. What challenges are you facing as you transition to these new platforms, and what opportunities do these new technologies bring?
Well, I think we can talk about some specific challenges, and they are very basically related that you need a big platform for the digital things. So a book, you can just read a book, but if you want an audiobook, you need an app, you need a big store, you need something. So, especially for small markets and small languages, it's very hard to develop these platforms. I'm right now working with a Slovenian publisher to develop a Slovenian storytell in a country with 2 million people that speak a language that no one else speaks, so it's a big challenge. So that's, I think it's a very big challenge for smaller markets and small languages. Audio, the big challenge is financial and the production costs are very high. But I would like to focus more on another challenge. I think the real challenge is in ourselves, because you really need to think outside the box. You need to leave our comfort zone. We all like the print, we like the smell of paper, but we need just to start publishing in other formats, in other things. And it's hard, it's not easy, it's not comfortable. In Brazil, with a partner, I have an audiobook publisher. And honestly, I hate audiobooks. I can't support to listen to another book. But there is people that want to listen to books. So we need to start thinking about these people. In terms of opportunities, digital, POD, all new formats, it's about access. That's the real thing. So if I just keep ebooks, for instance, ebooks offer geographic access, or audiobooks as well, because you can, I was just talking to someone from Singapore, I said, well, with ebooks, you can sell in any other country. It's also about financial access, because ebooks are cheaper. And it's also something that people don't talk much, but about disability access. So a very good EPUB can be turned into a text for those people who have dyslexia, can be read digitally, so it's all about access. And I think as Christian publishers, we should be a lot more worried about access and going to other people than even the general publishers. So I think the real opportunity is digital brings access and opens more markets and more people to the message. So that's what I summarize it.
Good. Sasha, how do you see the opportunities and challenges of transitioning to some of these new platforms?
Well, Carlos is an expert in this, and I attended his seminar and learned everything from scratch. So, he mentioned something very important, that the access is, and I think in the seminar there was the sentence that access is the queen.
It's the new king.
Okay, so the way I know this adage is that access is the queen and the content is the queen. Is the king. There's one king and one queen. So content and access are both important. And I remember when I was a very young husband and young pastor, I was wondering why I don't have a car. And I was not thinking of doing a driving license because I don't have a car. And then I realized I will never have a car until I get a driving license. That was a big revelation. So I think it's the same with all the new formats, the accessibility with all these new technologies. I'm not worried that we will not transition into these. I mean, progress is inevitable in this way. For centuries and millennia, technologies have been developing, and often the Christians were on the cutting edge of it, especially when it comes to books. But now I'm not sure in today's situation, but I think we will catch up sooner or later. Some countries like Sweden are far ahead, some countries like Czech Republic are not so far ahead. But I remember we first did with Tomasz, I don't know if he's here, we did our first ebook, Tim Keller and Kathy Keller's the marriage book, the meaning of marriage. And it did very well in print, and so we created an ebook. And we sold like 4 ebooks in 4 years. And so we were laughing about it, and actually said, okay, it doesn't work in the Czech Republic. And then later on, we realized, okay, let's put all our books into into ebook form, and just put it there, and put it on the different platforms, not only on our website, our publishing house website. And then suddenly, okay, it worked. It started. So first get a driving license, and the car comes later, I think.
It's a huge issue for all of us, and it's coming. Within 20 years, reality is going to look so much different than it does today. I want to move on to talk a little bit about Bible publishing. People who are involved in Bible publishing are a little worried right now because of a number of different things that are happening with Bibles. Barine, this is your area. I'd like you to speak to this. And Sasha, you have published Bible also. It would be great to get your input on this as well. Online Bible apps are becoming more efficient and ever present. YouVersion, probably most of you have access to YouVersion. Its Bible app alone now features more than 2,000 languages, 2,000 versions. Many people are now reading scripture from these apps or from pirated or low-cost editions. So my question to you, Barine, how are Bible societies and other Bible publishers adapting in order to survive in a scenario of declining revenue from Bible sales?
Thank you, and that's a challenging question that I possibly may not be able to do justice in a few minutes.
Yeah.
But I'll try and possibly paint a picture. For the longest time, for most Bible publishers, the biggest concern was about access. And so the thinking about how we can get the Bible to every person was a great concern. And that made many Bible publishers think about how do we access to nations that are close to the gospel and all that. And so a lot of effort and energy was put so much into how we can make them accessible. As a matter of fact, if you look at the United Bible Society's mission alone, it says the mission of the United Bible Societies is to make the Word of God available to everybody. And so one of the conversations I've had with Bible societies is to say, okay, so if everybody has access to the Word of God in whichever format, are we comfortable with that? And most of them say yes, but there's a but. And that but is simply because beyond access, I am confident to say this, that we made the Bible a product. Well, it's actually not supposed to be a product in itself. And so the struggle we have is now, because we made this product and it has become the piece that sustains us, the moment we make it easy to access to everybody, it means sustainability becomes a big issue.
Yeah.
And that's the big struggle. So I don't think many Bible publishers are struggling with the fact that people can access the Bible through YouVersion, because that they are living to their mission if you ask them. But they are struggling with the think of what does that mean for them, for us, in terms of sustainability. And I think that then poses a couple of questions in my own mind and my own thinking. That one, it's about thinking of the role of a Bible publisher. And when I talk about the role of Bible publisher, I think that applies to all of us who are publishers here. That technology has come in and has completely changed the role of a publisher, even book publishing. That we are coming from a time when publishers were in control of what their audiences received. That control has been withdrawn, and it has actually been given to the audience themselves. They determine what they want to read, and they'll access it when they want to read, and that is why then digital comes in. So that whole issue of access becomes a major challenge. And I think what that calls then is a different mindset in terms of the model, whether you call it a ministry model or a business model, is to appreciate that what worked for Bible publishers when access was the key thing, making sure that Bibles are available to everyone. Now that they have access, then you have to rethink of what's my role. And I think that's where Bible publishers then have to rethink of how do you engage with the people who are reading the Bibles. And from experience, what we've been able now to see is that many Bible societies are thinking of how do you build extra content into the Bible that will help people understand. Because the issue has nothing to do with access. More people are now seeking to know, how can I engage with this big Bible that I don't even know where to begin? So it's about rethinking the role of a Bible publisher, thinking about the ministry model, the business model, but also having to change. And I think one of the things that has been credited to Christian institutions is their slow process to change. That's why many of them get into trouble, because unlike other businesses out there that are very quick and swift in adapting to the environments, most of us are pretty slow. So I think it's just about thinking about our model and what we need to do, but we have to do things differently.
Sasha, I wonder if you could follow up with that. I know you have been a very innovative Bible publisher in the past. Some of the things that you've done have been groundbreaking. How are you seeing the use of some of these apps take over? Is this something that worries you? Is it something that allows you to sleep at night?
It doesn't worry me at all. I carry it with me.
Okay.
And from the very start, we made our Bible translation available online for free in all kinds of formats, including PDF. The whole Bible 21 is, everyone can download it and try to print it for cheaper than 1,800 pages in your home printer. I think we have a better offer for you. I don't see any of these platforms as competition at all, and our Bible cells are actually not diminishing. Our Bible cells are actually carrying our whole publishing house, allowing us to do other projects. So I think with the access of the electronic Bibles, a huge burden is taken off of our shoulders, and that's availability in terms of cost, because some people can't afford expensive Bibles, right? Some can, but many can't. And I think with these Bible apps, we are freed from the burden of producing cheap and ugly Bibles. My heart breaks. I get angry. I can explode when I see an ugly, cheap Bible. Believe me, I take it as an insult to God. When Solomon built a temple for God, he didn't use the cheapest materials. You know, when Moses built the ark, the same thing. And the Bibles historically were the most beautiful and precious books. And I understand the need for the mass market Bibles, but now we're free from that. And we still do paperback Bibles, and the different mission organizations buy them from us, or we just sell them by box and all that. And it's very good for whatever, youth camps, and, mission, evangelism. But when it comes to the individual buyers, we are now finally free to focus on moving from Bible as commodity to Bible as artifact, as something beautiful, as something special and precious. I mean, I have the Bible app, but I have my printed Bibles at home for different uses. So just to close it up, as I walked today and thought a little bit about these questions that I got like 1 hour before. Yes. I was reminded of how Jesus was anointed for his burial in Bethany. And when disciples got mad, Jesus said, "She did something beautiful for me." Right? And some translations mistranslate that and say she did a good deed for me, something good. But in Greek there's kalos, not agathos, something beautiful, not something good, as you know, as Judas thought. There needs to be some good. No, there was nothing. It was just beautiful, and Jesus needed it in his final hours. Yeah. And so I think we should do something beautiful for our readers and for Jesus.
Amen. I'm going to need to skip over the next question. We'll get back to it if we can. But I want to focus now on the new generation of readers that we see coming up and requiring and demanding things from us that maybe in the past we haven't been so ready to produce. How do we keep relevant to a new generation of readers, keeping in mind diversity, minorities, different orientations that are affecting the church today? A new generation of readers has new concerns about theology and social issues, Christianity and culture, and the need for a greater diversity of voices. How do you keep relevant? I'm going to ask Bernice this question. How do you keep relevant to these new readers who represent a growing part of our audience? How do you keep relevant to young readers, to new readers?
Well, we're at a bit of an advantage in Graceworks because we've, for a couple of years now, we've been doing what we call the Generations Project. We started this because, churches have been experiencing a drain from the churches of the younger people. And we wanted to understand what their worldview was and all that. And in the process of that, we realized, because then we couldn't just stop at doing the millennials, for instance, we had to then understand why they were reacting to the boomers, and then we needed to understand the boomers better, so that the different generations could connect and speak to each other. Anyway, so we realized that with the younger generation, there is considerable learned knowledge which they have access to because of the internet.
Mhm.
But the older generation have got learned experience, lived experience for the older people. So with the younger readers, we have to actually succumb to doing bite-sized books. Yeah, bite-sized books. Because they're so used to computer pages. Also, we had to think about the medium of delivery. Most of our books are done into ebooks as well. But locally, well, the ones that we sell on our website, we found that still they would go for the hard copy. I mean, hard copies sell far more than ebooks do. But with a lot of young people, they start off buying the ebooks. And then when they realize that, okay, this is a subject that I want to get into, they actually buy the hard copy as well.
Mhm.
So yeah, we do ebooks. We also have to value add, and on the website we have blogs, and we try to use social media to reach them. So that those are some of the things we've been doing.
Great. As we look at you, all five of you sitting here, we see examples of leadership. And one of the questions I wanted to ask, one of my last questions, is about leadership. Leadership, engagement, and continuing education. How do you keep current? Book and periodical publishing have undergone enormous changes in the past decades. And some of the changes are due to changing production technology, but others can be attributed to competition from other media. There are only 24 hours in a day, and there are many, many, many other things to do other than read books in those 24 hours today, much more than in the past. And so some of the changes can be attributed to that competition from other media, but then also to disruptions in distribution systems. So as a leader within your organization, within your publishing house, within your company, how do you keep abreast of the shifting context? What sorts of things do you need to do? What do you check? What do you read? Who do you look at? Who do you compare yourselves to? How do you keep abreast of the shifting context and of upcoming issues most likely to affect you? How do you prepare yourself and your organization for the future? So let's go to Carlo with that question.
Okay, that's a hard one. I think basically, in a nutshell, you need to get out of the bubble. As a publisher, there is a publishing bubble also. So as you mentioned, all these platforms, and we start saying that they are competing with us. Maybe they're not. Maybe they could help us.
Yeah.
As I used to say, there is only one thing that's worse than Amazon selling books. It's Amazon not selling books. As they do in Sweden. They launch in Sweden, they don't care about books. So I think it's worse than having Amazon selling books. So that's just an example. But so if Spotify is growing, and why? So let's get out of our publishing bubble and try to understand what they're doing, how you can do things together. So Netflix, for instance, is desperately looking for stories everywhere in every country. They've been producing Czech movies, they've been producing things in Galician, and looking for local stories. So there might be some opportunities there. So how to integrate it to that? Maybe instead of going to a publishing conference, you need to go to entertainment conference or to Southwest in Austin, which is about everything. So that's the first bubble you need to leave. And then, of course, I think you need to be looking more into the general market, because the general market includes the Christian market, so we're part of it by definition.
Mm-hmm.
And then we really need to go to Frankfurt and see what things are everything what's going on. Some things might work for us, some don't, but I think it's just about living the bubble. And the publishing bubble particularly. I mean, the publishers, even if you talk to the CEOs of the big publishers in the US, the UK, in France, they really don't discuss with Netflix, with these other platforms, and they see it's always as an enemy. Maybe they're not the enemy, maybe they are or friends. Or you can find ways to be friends, because if you cannot beat them, try to join them, right?
Right.
I have just one short
Sure,
sentence
sure.
there.
Yeah, please.
Hire younger people.
I was going to say
Ah.
the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Word shall stand in the mouth of two witnesses.
Yeah.
I learned from them.
Yes, I agree.
Good,
We
good.
have wonderful young people, and they're way faster than we can ever be on the internet.
Yeah.
So we
Unfortunately.
learn a lot from them.
Barine, your whole career has revolved around leadership training, mentoring. How do you see this issue? How do you keep current? How do you counsel the leaders that you mentor and deal with in terms of keeping relevant, keeping aware of what the next issues are, how to be prepared as leaders for the future?
I think there are a couple of things that I could pretty quickly mention, and one of them is the fact that for the longest time, publishers were in control. They were in control of what the audience accessed, they had control of the processes, they had control of everything. And I think the biggest struggle for many people who are publishers and who've been there for long is that they're still looking to maintain that control. And I think the best lesson that all of us can learn tonight is to let go, to realize that we are not in control anymore. And the moment you do that, it releases you to actually unlearn some of the bad habits that we've gathered over time and learn new ways of doing things. And I think my biggest journey has always been to wake up every day to say, what I knew yesterday is not going to work today. And so when Carlo comes here and says, oh, there's a new platform, I'm willing to say, how can that work for me? Some of it works, some of it doesn't work, but it doesn't matter anyway, I try. And I think trying new things. So for me, what I've done is to appreciate that the knowledge of yesterday will not work today. It's even going to be worse off tomorrow. So if I'm going to prepare for tomorrow, I have to forget what worked yesterday and be prepared for what works today. It also means I need to keep on trying new things. Some of them will work, others will be a disaster. But hey, I tried. And if it didn't work, it's fine. But I think even more so also is to keep myself current and looking at the trends, what's happening. I like when he said going to Frankfurt. Frankfurt is where you find the list of the Christian publishers. But it's one of the places I've learned a lot when it comes to publishing and what is happening when I go into those workshops and and seminars they do. I keep a subscription to things like Publishing News that I get to receive almost every other week and get to understand what's happening in the rest of the world. And attending webinars, some of them have nothing to do with Christian publishing. But I still get to understand what's happening, whether it's in academic publishing or general trade, and I'm able to pick some of those lessons and apply them in my own context, and that works perfectly well. So it's keeping an open mind and appreciating that the world is changing, and if you are going to make a difference, you need to be aware of what's happening and how you can make a difference.
Thank you, Barine. We have a final question, and I want to start with Sawsan. And arguably, Sawsan, you have faced more change in your context than most of the rest of us, because it's not only the pandemic, but all of the other things that you mentioned. And so my question to you, and I'd like each one of the 5 panel members to answer this from your own reality, from your own context. In the midst of this change, what keeps you motivated to keep working in publishing? How do you keep your employees motivated? And what is the greatest challenge you expect to face to survive and thrive in the days ahead?
Well, what we are witnessing and what's happening around us, I think the results, we came to a result that it's now time more than ever. What's happening, people are asking questions, titles. People are in need to hear more. So this challenged us more. People are asking why, if I die by the COVID-19, my relative died, did he go to heaven, or where is he now? So they have several questions, and so it's time to, more than again, let's seize the opportunity. That's challenges us very much. And because of the blast, people search for remedy and comfort. And as a Christian house, it's our role to do that. That challenges us more. Hearing about the impact of our publications in remote villages in Syria, in the camps, Syrian camps, refugees in Iraq as well. We have several tens of testimonies and stories here and there. And after the Beirut blast and during the economic crisis, for instance, we have distributed When Your World Falls Apart after the blast and during the economic crisis. And people called me, thank you for this book, and this encouraged us more to publish such publications, such titles. A Power of Suffering by MacArthur. So these are very helpful publications among this crisis, all what's happening. The feedback on our books, also that we are connecting with several seminaries in the MENA region, and because they are studying online, we have to provide them with material, with textbooks and theological books and commentaries. And they keep asking us, we are in need of such title, please go ahead and publish it. So this encouraged us to move forward with both translation and written and locally written books. So this is, I think it's time to select good titles that fulfill the needs in such circumstances. That's encouraged us a lot. And how we encouraged or we challenged our staff, because our staff also is passing through the same challenges. We kept always a link between the staff, always talking to each other, always calling each other, encouraging each other, always on Zoom devotional, on Zoom, sharing, praying, sharing from the Bible stories and verses, and sending to each other via WhatsApp or Facebook to challenge them, and asking about their parents, their families, their situation, what they are doing, how they are coping, how they are surviving. This is very important. So we first challenge each other and encourage each other, so we can encourage the leaders and.
That's wonderful, and your employees depend on you for that vision, for that articulation, for the ability to see beyond the difficult parts of the day. I want to switch to Carlo now. What keeps you motivated? You didn't start off in publishing, but what keeps you motivated to keep working in publishing? What do you see as challenges and opportunities for the days ahead?
Okay, so I'll tell a little story. Some time ago, I took my kids to see a children's play in Rio de Janeiro, which was called The Boy That Wanted to Be a Writer. And the whole play was about this boy talking to a bookseller that sold old books. And in the middle of this play, it was really for children, the bookseller told the boy, you know, there is only one thing that can change the world. And the boy says, what, books? And the bookseller says, no, stories. So what makes me move on are stories, not exactly books. And as a challenge, and that might be shocking, and sorry for all the booksellers here, but I think the real challenge is the vanishing of the bookstores. Of course, it's got a little bit better. Independent stores in the US are growing, but come on. More than 50% of the sales in the US are online, so the traditional bookstore are really in jeopardy, and I don't think it's a lot of wishful thinking to believe that in 10, 15, 20 years they'll be there. So I think that's a big challenge, how publishers can adapt to that, how booksellers can reinvent themselves. But I'm very optimistic, because the pandemic has shown that the publishing market can survive without the bookstores. Italy had no bookstore for 3 months and still survived and it was okay. And also, just to finish, moving from Brazil to Sweden, there is a big, well, there's nothing common in those two countries except the football shirt. But I moved from a country that basically has terrible libraries to a country that has the best libraries you can imagine, where my kids don't ask to go to a bookstore, they ask to go to the library. So everything that we sometimes lament about the disappearing of bookstores, discoverability, come on guys, libraries are there for that. And libraries that are for the people, not for the books, can really take over this role of the bookstores. And just being a little bit critical, I haven't heard the word library in this conference yet. So I think every church should have a library, and they're even more important than a bookstore. So I'm really positive about this problem in distribution, the booksellers, because as long as you have very good libraries for the people, where you can have coffee and split on the book, and that's fine. Libraries should be for the people, not for the books. We're going to still have discoverability, people still love books and everything. So that's the challenge I see, but I think one of the solutions are the libraries.
Great. Barine, what keeps you motivated to continue working in publishing?
I think for me, that question connects with my own life. The fact that books have molded me, they've shaped me. And as a result of that, I've used books to help other people in trouble and seen their lives change. And so I see that books, not, just like he said, it's not about the book really, it's about the message that's in that book. And that's why for me, as a publisher really, what I focus on a lot is actually the content, much more than just the book itself. So books have made a significant impact in my life. I have seen them change lives. And so if that's all I can do to change lives, trust me, I'll do it again and again, because it's about the change that we can make in one life or another. And I think that's what keeps me moving every day. Yeah.
Sasha, in a country such as Czechia, you would have many excuses to do something else in life. What keeps you motivated? What keeps you focused on the future and keeps you excited about tomorrow?
Well, I grew up in an atheist country, child of atheist parents, Communist Party members.
Yeah.
And I had nothing to live for. There was nothing to live for. It was only lies and grayness and meaninglessness and absurdity of life. And then I knew some believers and I envied them. I thought that faith is a superpower they have, and I was not born with it. And they told me so. They said, you know, faith is a gift, and apparently God gave it to us. Sorry. And then when I was almost 19, a Zambian brother, a student in Czechoslovakia, for the first time in my life, shared the gospel with me as a story, the best story ever told, life-changing story. So freely you have received, freely give. I can do none else. So I want every Czech person and every person in the universe to experience that I experienced. So that's my motivation. And what motivates our staff is we try to pay them well, we try to give them benefits, and we empower them. And they're young people, and they can develop. The guy who started as my assistant is now running the company basically in just few short years. So, and the challenge I fear or feel is that we have nothing to say. Is that we don't have answers for people today, or that we have answers nobody asks. We have answers to questions nobody asks. We solve problems nobody has. We know Jesus is the answer, but what is the question? And so I believe the question or the challenge is not how we package our message, but what is our message? What is the good news? It needs to be good and needs to be news. And often what we print, what we publish is neither, for our audience, we're preaching to the choir. And in my country, the choir is 0.2% of population. So I'm interested about the rest, and I think we need reformers, we need theologians, we need thinkers, we need authors like Philip over there, but we need them in every country, because a bestseller in America is not a bestseller in Czech Republic, because the questions are different. So that is the challenge. That doesn't let me sleep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Can I
Bernice?
reply to him, please?
Yes, please
Sure.
reply to me. Be very
We have, years ago, we have published books with zero interest. And we have learned from that. So when we want to publish a textbook, theological textbook, we go to Minati, we go to the theological seminaries and ask the scholars or the theologians, well, what is the need? What do you want us to publish? When we want to publish something for children, we go to the Sunday school teachers. Because we don't know, we're not on site all the time. We want to hear from people, what do they need from the leaders. That's why it's very important. Thank you for what you have.
we do that too, of course.
Exactly.
I mean, it's not that.
But this is
you know,
the issue. So
but the thing
we
is,
shouldn't be afraid,
No.
because
the thing is that the Sunday school leaders and theologians are living in their bubbles as well, and we want to reach beyond that bubble. And of course, the bubble is important. It's like with the church. We publish books for church and for seminary, and we publish books that sell 500 copies. But it's important. We publish anti-rights because it moves the whole paradigm, but it's not going to, pay itself.
Yeah.
So no. But my issue is, I think, broader than do we need to exist as publishing house? No, we don't. We can go, wash cars or something. We're here not to survive as a publishing house. We're here to meet the needs.
to fulfill the needs. That's
Yes,
what
yes.
we are existing.
So that's why we don't have competition, because we're doing things nobody else does, and nobody else dares to do. But still, I'm afraid we don't have answers relevant enough and deep enough in face of the challenges of today's world. And I know they're there. There are great thinkers, great artists, great reformers, but in seed form. And so I'm praying for the new voices. And it's so exciting as publishers. I'm a preacher too, but it's so much more exciting to give voice to other preachers or other voices, the best in the world, the best in my country. So
Thank you,
it's awesome to be a
Sasha.
publisher.
Thank you,
Sorry,
Sasha.
sorry.
Thank you, Sawsan. This sounds like a publishing strategy meeting to me. And I'll give Bernice the last word then. We need to wrap up. So what keeps you motivated in publishing?
One of the arms of our publishing program is we unpack the Bible for the challenges of daily living. And as long as we have human beings with challenges every day, there are new things for us to publish.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited by that. We only recently began our journey with children's books. And we've seen how we reached parents because of the children's books we do. And they have an impact on societal issues. So it really warms my heart to see these things happening. And we've only just begun this journey, so there's ways to go. The challenge for me would be product differentiation going forward. I'm not sure how we're going to do this yet.
That's a challenge for all of us. Thank you to this panel. Let's thank Sawsan, Carlo, Barine, Sasha, and Bernice. And thank each one of you as well. May the Lord be with us as we look toward the future and plan for what's coming.